Hey, everybody, welcome to module number 5. This week we are going to be focusing on the peer responding and revising. A couple things about this week that really I think you can carry with you as you go forward. In your classes, in your career field, in pretty much everything you're going to be doing. um, this idea of reaching out and collaborating and working with others, right? That's going to be like a really big important thing, no matter what you do. And this week, we're really going to be looking at peer evaluation, having other people respond to your work, and then you being able to take that information and use that to revise your own work. Okay, so we're really going to focus on that aspect of today. Now, obviously, you're going to get some feedback from me on your half draft or the draft that you submitted. You'll get that information back, but also you're going to get feedback from the other people in the class, and then you can use that to help improve your paper too. So we we got we have the learning materials, we have the assignments listed here, our objectives. Let's take a look at some of the big assignments that you're going to be working on. And one of the ones that you're going to do right off the bat is working with tutor.com. Now, I've talked to you about this before. Tutor.com is a service that you get through Ivy Tech as a student. You get 25 free hours of tutoring. Okay. Realistically, I think that that is going to get you something like uh, I'm going to say like 30 different papers or something. Like a lot of the tutoring times that you're going to work with people are going to be somewhere in that 20 to 30-minute range. You really have a lot of time that you can use tutor.com for in a variety of different fields. We're going to use it for that writing piece here, where we're going to use that service to get some feedback on your paper. So when you approach your paper to do the final draft, you are actually going to have your feedback from tutor.com, you're going to have feedback from me, and you're going to have feedback from your peers. So you're going to have a lot of information that you can use. A lot of different eyeballs are going to be on your paper. And I think that's really important because anytime you can have somebody who isn't invested in the paper look at it, they're going to have a fresh perspective, right? Like when you look at your paper, you know what you meant to say, you know the information, and you kind of mentally fill in all the blanks, right? Like all the holes, the parts that you didn't really flesh out or explain. You know what you meant to say, and so you kind of everything kind of just agrees with that, right? But somebody else who has the benefit of being more objective, fresh eyes, a little bit farther away from the assignment, right, or from the task, they can look at it just a little bit differently. They're as much more as a consumer, where you're much more as a producer of the information. So this will get you started on how to do the tutor.com, and then you will submit your work to them for review. Now, a couple things. So when you get done, what you're going to do is you're going to submit a copy of the transcript. Okay, so while you're working, you're going to see this like little chat, kind of filter through, and at the end, you're going to have the option to download that. And there's some instructions on here, and then you're going to post that for us, and then you're going to reflect on your time with the tutor. What did you get out of it? What did you think? What was the highlight, the benefit? Were there drawbacks? Were there things that really didn't work out for you? I think one of the benefits of this kind of assignments, besides getting someone else to look at your paper, is this idea of being able to explain to others what you want to do. You have to be able to explain, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I was trying to accomplish, right? So being able to communicate that information out so that the tutor or peers or whoever can give you some feedback on it, that's a valuable skill too. So that you will afterwards submit the transcript and then also the reflection. Now, I know that in the past, some people have had some trouble downloading the transcripts. It either comes across in a format that maybe your laptop doesn't read, which it should just be a text file. But some people have had trouble with that. Some people have it like it didn't download or whatever, and some people like just really struggled with that. And I don't want you to think that's going to hurt your grade. Okay. What I would suggest is that maybe you take a screenshot, like take a couple screenshots while you're working with the tutor. If you can't download that chat file, then you'd be able to, like, post some screenshots. So like, hey, I couldn't get the file, but I at least have this. And that lets me know that you did the work, right? Also, maybe if you just go in and just copy it, right? Like maybe you could just copy it before you get done, and you log off. Maybe just run through that and copy it real quick and then paste it onto a doc, and you can submit it that way. So you have a couple things, but I do want to warn you that people have had some trouble in the past. So you might want to just kind of protect yourself. Um, the real reason for that transcript is so that we know that you did it, right? Because we don't get any formal report back from tutor.com that you utilize that service. So this is just kind of a check, and it just helps the college know that you utilize that service and you did do the actual assignment. We've also got some information here on peer responses, and why we do peer responses. And this is some really good information. I really think that you're going to get a lot out of this. Like I said, one of the big things about peer review is that you get fresh eyeballs, right? Like somebody who's not emotionally invested in the work. The example I've always said before is like you if you wrote a paper and you said, "Oh God, this is awful. This sucks. It's the worst thing ever. It's terrible. It's trash. It's no good." Right? And then somebody else comes along and then they read it. They're like, "Whew, yeah, you're right. It is trash." That really hurts, right? That really hurts. And it's not so much, and it's. I think the thing isn't so much that they said it was trash. It was the fact that you're emotionally invested in it. And somebody said something about something that you really were proud of. Even though you said it was awful, right? You don't really mean that. And so, one of the things that having that other person, a peer, a tutor, or whatever, give you some feedback, they're not emotionally invested. And like I said a minute ago, too, you know what you meant to say, you know how you wanted to say it, you know all the information. So you're just kind of plugging in all the holes, right? So it really allows somebody as a consumer to look at the information. Was that message complete? Did it make sense? Was it persuasive? Did it do its job, right? All of those things, right? So it really does give you a fresh set of eyeballs on that, right? Now, one of the things I do like about having peers read your paper is the fact that they're familiar with the assignment. They know what you're supposed to be doing. When you go into tutor.com, they're going to have an idea of what you're doing, and you're going to explain to them what you're trying to do, right? And they're going to really look at, the nuts and the bolts, and does this explain this, and how do I see it, right? Well, your peers know what the assignment is. They know what we're supposed to be doing. They know what the goal was. They know what the end result was supposed to be, right? And so when they go in and they look at this, they know, like, oh, you didn't finish this, or where's the summary, or you were supposed to have this part in there, or hey, we're supposed to do this thing, right? And they know that, right? And so they can kind of help you along with that as well. Now, one of the things to think about when you are giving feedback are the four B's, and I think this is really important in this class, any class, in your workplace, whatever. This how to interact with other people, right? And I don't want to get into this like kind of kindergarten, be kind of speech, right? But I think it's important to understand there's certain expectations. This isn't like, you go into McDonald's and they mess up your cheeseburger and then you can just go off and say horrible things, right? These are your peers. You're going to be working with them. They're going to be working with your paper, right? So think about the best ways to respond that are effective yet are within the norms of this class. So the first thing is be tactful, considerate of people's feelings, right? Again, like I said, you're very emotionally attached to your work. You really like your work, even though you say you don't. You are. Okay. So we do need to understand when you go in and you're creating your response, you do need to keep in the back of your mind that these are people who have put out something and shared something about themselves, and they are kind of proud of it, and they can be hurt by that if you don't come across in the best way. Obviously, be honest. Don't tell people it's great work if it's not. We're trying to help people get their paper better. We want people to have a better product in the end. So be honest. If you didn't like something, you can say that. Now you have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to prove it. You have to be able to point to this, this, and this is why that didn't work for you. Okay. But we're just not going in and bagging on people. And we don't want people to come out with unrealistic expectations like, oh, everybody said it was awesome, man, right? Oh, if something wasn't working, let's be honest and let's share that with them. Be specific. And I think this is really that protection against really coming across in a mean way, right? Like, this paper really felt unorganized for me. For instance, this piece was here and this piece was here, but for me, this was the more important piece. So I would lead with it, right? I really think it's important to kind of think about that and to really kind of put that into some context. Like, if you say like the word choice wasn't really what a college paper should be, point to some examples. For instance, you use the word a lot, you used you use whatever, right? Point to some of those things, be specific. When you can say I felt this because of this piece here, that really removes some of the sting, and that really makes it not about like I'm just randomly saying horrible things about you. I'm critiquing your paper. I'm not being mean to be mean. I'm being honest and truthful and trying to help you get this paper to a better grade. And then be yourself. Um, and this is kind of, again, not to get so much into that kindergarten speech, right? But this idea that don't try to be something you're not. Don't try to be like the teacher. Don't try to be like some taskmaster or something, right? Be yourself. You read the paper as you would consume it, and you give your feedback based on that. Um, in the end, I don't want you to think that um, I don't want you to think that this is like some mission to tear people down. I am always impressed when people put in things that they like, hey, this part really worked. I really like this information. The way you presented this was really great. That organization really worked for me. That example nailed it, right? Don't be afraid to point out the parts that really work, okay? Because I think this is feedback. And if you point out the things that need to be fixed, they can fix that and get their grade better. But then you can say, hey, these are things that really were helpful to the paper. They can take that and also use that to build up the paper as well, right? To continue that idea through the rest of the paper. So again, think about these 4 Bs. There's a lot of information here about how to respond to people. We're not trying to tear this whole thing down, okay? We're really trying to give some feedback that people can use to improve their paper. I think one last thing to think about when you're doing some peer feedback, uh, I would really focus on the message and the content and the way it's presented, and much less about spelling and commas and punctuation, things like that. If there's something, yes, note that, okay? But this is really about global editing, and this is really, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's really about getting that message complete, right? So I think this is a super important piece. I think this is something that you are going to be doing a lot of moving forward, and that it is really beneficial on a lot of different levels. Then we get into the peer response itself. Okay, so last week you came over here and you posted in your half draft, right? Like the part that you read, you posted that. Now everybody can see it. Now everybody can go in and make some comments and some questions, and give you some feedback to help improve that paper. You will notice here that it gives you some instructions, including some questions. And what they want you to do is they want you to find 3 of these 5 questions and focus in on that. Okay. So and label it A and then your response, and C and your response, D and your response, right? Go ahead and put that information in your replies. Um, the thing I think about peer review, again, I've said a lot of the positives about peer review and a lot of the things that the writer gets out of it. I think you as the reviewer, you as the peer who reads people's work, uh, I really think you get a lot out of this because you get to see what works and what doesn't. And imitation is the highest form of flattery. And I think it's like, wow, that didn't work for me. Why did that not work? Ah, is that something that I have done? And so you can take those kinds of things and look at your own work, right? So I think that you get to see, when you get to see a variety of approaches, you get to see a variety of writing styles, you get to see what works and what doesn't, and that helps you improve your own craft. Again, as a reminder for the discussion board, you've already put your post up, so there's no need for that first initial post. That's already done, right? So you need to be going in, looking at least 2 people and over multiple days. Okay. So you want to have that kind of conversation coming in. Okay. Make sure that you are doing that so you have, and more than the 2, obviously, to get the crack at the most possible points. And then we're going to come in and do the final draft of your comparative analysis. Again, as a reminder, it should be somewhere around 1,000 words in either MLA or APA style. Okay. And the big goal here is to do that comparative analysis. If you remember what I said last time in Module 4, the comparative analysis is that brief summary. Here's this, here's this. Okay. You describe and explain those overlaps, those comparisons, how they're like, how they're not, and then you analyze why is that significant, what is important about that, what makes that overlap, differences, distinctions, similarities, differences, whatever, important to note. Okay. uh, you think about McDonald's and Burger King, right? They both serve cheeseburgers. McDonald's, they're fried. Burger King, they're flame broiled, charbroiled, right? They're on open flame. Both cheeseburgers, similarities, cooked differently, differences. Now, why does that matter? Well, McDonald's is for speed. Burger King is not, right? Like it's about that process, that flavor. So when you go in, you kind of have an expectation that Burger King's going to take a little bit longer, right? Because it's a different process. They cook that meat differently, right? McDonald's, they want to get you in, they want to get you out, and they want to make it cheap as possible. Burger King, not so much. Expect to pay a little bit more, right? That's the difference. The type of cooking that they do leads to that assumption that there's going to be a different experience, right? And you know that going in, or at least you learn that as you're there. That's comparative analysis. Here's how they're similar, here's how they're different, but really, why does it matter? What is the significance? What's the importance? What's the takeaway of that? And it walks you through what we should see in here, um, and what we really want to have in the end. I just want to touch on revision for just a minute. There are two processes to revision that I talk about in my classes. It's global editing and mechanical editing. Global is about the message. This is, what was your purpose? Did you accomplish that purpose? Who were you aiming it for? Does that message work for them? Did you create a message that is whole and complete and understandable and matches your goals, what you set up in that thesis statement, and what was supposed to be in the assignment? Okay. These are things like, is it 1,000 words, or is it in style? Those are kind of things such as you're supposed to compare and analyze. Well, I have comparison. I need that analysis, right? Global editing is looking at the message, the words, the ideas, the concepts, the things that were presented, and how they were presented. Mechanical editing is the grammar, spelling, the commas, the whatever, right? I always tell people, do the global first. Do that message first. Get all that done first, right? If you do that and you get the message the way you need it to be, then you can go in and clean up the spelling and the commas and the whatever. But if you're doing both at the same time and you're adding stuff over here and you're changing and you're whatevering, and but you're at your commas and your spellings or whatever at the same time, and you get to the end and you hit submit, well, when you were adding stuff, did you check it for those spellings? Did you check it for those commas, right? So mechanical editing is just that finesse, that cleanup. It's almost like a punch list. If you have been around construction, it's all the little fine details, right? You can miss those, especially when you're adding and changing and moving stuff around, right? So always finesse the message first, then check all the other pieces. Some things to think about as you are doing your revision. This paper, now the first writing project we did was your personal reaction. This one is not. So we do not want to have I, no we, no us. Keep that first person out. I'd also really limit the second person as well. Those are very casual approaches, and we want to really try to limit those. Okay. I think that you need to have a very strong thesis. It needs to show up front. This is what's going on. And that introduction, we should have that attention getter, that strong thesis. We definitely need to see the name and titles, the authors and the titles of the works that you're comparing, right? Like that should be very upfront, very upfront. As you are working on this, think about, as you're revising, think about those commas. And I know that's a place that a lot of people get stuck at. And I've written this on several places. Um, if you're really unsure about whether you should have a comma somewhere or not, or you put a comma in your nest, like, do I really need that there? Read it out loud to yourself as it is punctuated. So periods are longer pauses, semicolons are 3/4 of a pause, commas are a half a pause. Okay. So as you're reading through something, take that pause, right? Like when there's a comma, just and then go on, right? Does it sound right? You're not going to catch all of them. I guarantee that you're not going to catch all of them. And it's going to be a little bit, it takes a little bit of time, right, to do this. But read it as it is punctuated. We learned language by listening to the people around us. Okay. And so we have this kind of instinct of what the language should sound like. Okay. It's not perfect. It's not going to catch everything, right? But read it out loud to yourself. The whole paper, parts of the paper, whatever you're having question, right? If it sounds weird, if it doesn't sound quite right, take another look at it. Something else I've written on several papers is subordinating conjunctions. These are like, however, therefore, moreover, but also, although. So be careful using one of those as the start of a sentence. Okay. Um, Subordinate conjunctions take that clause and they make it dependent on something else, on the clause before it, right? That it's conjoined to. So to punctuate that, you'd have a semicolon, the subordinating conjunction, and then a comma, then the rest of the second sentence. If you start a sentence with a subordinating conjunction, you are in effect making that sentence a dependent clause. Now, I know that for stylistic effect, sometimes that works, right? Like, especially like, however, you talk, 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 however, and then you give this new idea and you're really trying to turn the topic, you're trying to turn the conversation. I think that works, okay? But I think you always want to be very careful about using that subordinated conjunction at the start of a sentence because does your reader know that's what you're doing, right? Does your reader understand that's what's going on? Because if not, then it feels like maybe you've made a mistake. And if your audience sees a lot of grammar mistakes, they're going to assume that you made a lot of other mistakes in other areas of the paper too, like your thinking, your logic, your research, right? And so they kind of lose a little bit of trust in you, and that's why grammar is so important, right? It cleans all that stuff up. Um, I think like again, you have a lot of feedback for this paper. You've got a lot of different eyeballs on this paper. I think the final takeaway for all of that is that it's feedback, but it's not necessarily gospel truth. And so if somebody says, I'm not really sure about using this example here, I maybe move it up, or have you thought about using this idea instead of that idea, or I'm not sure you understood that article. Did you think about it this way? That's feedback, okay? Doesn't mean you have to change it, right? You want to paint your front door bright neon purple? Great, do it. When people walk by, they're like, wow, that's an interesting choice, or that's really bright color. I never would have thought of doing that myself, right? Hey, you're going to do that? Maybe do this, right? That's feedback. Doesn't mean you're like, oh, yeah, you're probably right, and paint the door black or something, okay? It's feedback. You take what they say, you think about why they said it, you think about the effect that it has on that end result, that end consumer, right? And then you evaluate, is this something I need to change? Do I need to adapt? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to add that into my editing process? So think about it in that respect. Finally, then we have the final submission of your writing project number 2, the comparative analysis. Again, like always, there is the rubric down here, and I always like to remind people go in there, take a look at that, so you can kind of say, okay, do I have that introduction? Do I have that thesis? I mean, if you think about that, your thesis statement is, what 7-8% of the paper, right? So you want to take a look at that, like, okay, do I really have that? That could be the difference between, a C and a D, for instance, right? Think about down here the comparison. Okay, do I explain those pieces? Almost a third of the paper is those two ideas. Like, did I really compare those two, right? Think about that because that really, if you know what we're looking for and you know where those points are going to be distributed, you really can look for those and make sure that you have those things in. All right, so as I kind of wrap things up here for module number 5, um, again, you guys are doing some great work. It's amazing to see you guys, the things you're doing and the way you're keeping up, and the thing and just the improvements that I'm seeing already. Those things are awesome. We are halfway through the semester now, so now we're on the back side, so we're moving down through the rest of the stuff, right? Uh, It is important to stay up. It's important to keep up, right? Don't get behind. If something does happen, please make sure you reach out. Let me know so that I can help you with that, help you get caught back up, help you answer those questions, or I can point you to some some things that we might need to do to, if we do know that we're going to get way behind, what are our options and what can we be doing? Okay. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out. Email is always the best approach. And good luck, everybody.